All right, welcome to the Young Turks election coverage. I didn't know when to start screaming. Giant coverage for you guys today. 12 hours straight. I believe we're triple streaming YouTube, Facebook, Twitter.
I gotta go in an hour. I was thinking that it would be wrapped up.
Maybe we can call Pennsylvania.
So when we start one of these things, we've got a lot of things to go over. We've got the excitement of the day. We've got my anecdotal evidence. That's coming. Okay. Very important in Los Angeles because as Los Angeles goes, so goes libs, but nothing else. Anyways, then of course we'll get into our usual California voting frustrations. And we'll dip a little bit into the Electoral College and explain that because as some of you might think, oh, that's elementary, my dear Watson. But my dear Uyghur, but we actually have a very large international audience, and for them it is perplexing. And yes, today in the first hour we have logistics, so that's a ton of fun.
Okay. When are you going to change?
I might actually change throughout the day.
I know. I brought an extra outfit too.
I also brought extra outfits.
I'm the only one who didn't bring an extra outfit.
Well, if we look like you, we wouldn't worry about bringing an extra outfit.
Yeah. All right, Ben Mankiewicz, Jake Uyghur, John Iadarola, Anna Kasparian. I will be yelling throughout the day. The first thing is everybody share. Okay, sharing is caring. It's a share-a-thon. What I mean by that is we need the largest audience on the web today, okay? I need you to show us how strong we are, okay? So we're going to keep on sharing throughout the day with your family and friends because thank you for being here. But if you're on Twitter, obviously retweet. If you're on Facebook, share, okay? If you're on YouTube, you can embed the code. You can send an email or just there's a share button too where you send it to Facebook, Twitter, etc. So keep on doing that so that everybody's watching here. I get a little mad this morning because I was reading about how other people will be covering the election, and they were bragging about things like CNN has a second stream, but on that stream, Wolf Blitzer makes it really gets personal and tells you why he doesn't go on elevators on election day.
Oh, hey.
I'm like, wow, that is good. I didn't know they were going to get crazy like that at CNN. And then different people are like, oh, we've got musicians. The other one's like, we got clowns.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious why.
Don't they always have clowns, though?
Yeah. Okay, he's superstitious and thinks he's going to get stuck in an elevator and miss all the coverage. Okay. Okay, anyway. Here, I just ruined all of CNN's coverage for you online.
So here's the best thing we have. For the third straight year.
Third straight election.
Third straight election. The big board.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is left over.
Oh, my God. I think Obama's going to win.
He is. Now, so what we're going to do here is we raise it up there. See, at the bottom, I'll be putting all of the states. We'll have the solid blues, and then the solid reds. And then we'll have a bigger mix this year so we can have more drama, even if we kind of know.
Yeah, well, that's a question. That's a question we're going to tackle right away.
And then as they come in, we'll put them up here and we'll call it. And I had to wrap this in cellophane because it's so badly chipped, it literally will bleed all over the table. But our
budget is impressive.
We're ready to go now. It's
blank.
During my break in the action, we'll
we should mount that afterward.
No, yeah, it can stay here.
You know what?
Yeah.
No, make sure that's preserved. That should go to the museum. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding.
It might. You never know.
Okay.
Should we start off by talking about our experience this morning at the polls if we voted this morning?
Yeah. Let's do that.
I think that's important.
Okay, and then right after that, we're going to tell you who's going to win. Okay.
So this is the first time that I experienced an insanely long line.
Me too!
At the polling place because, first of all, I wanted to make sure I got to work on time. So I showed up 30 minutes before the polls opened just to make sure that
That's such a Casper move.
5:30?
It was the best decision I made,
yeah, so did the Mankiewiczes. We were there at 7:30.
7:30?
Wow, that is not a Mankiewicz move.
At 8:30.
Yeah. Okay.
So the polls opened at 7 a.m. Where I'm at, and so I got there at 6:30, and there was already an insanely long line. Alonso and I actually live in the same area, so he told
Duraldi from What the Flick.
Yeah, from What the Flick. And so as we were waiting in line, all of a sudden I see him and his partner walking out, and I was like, Alonso. He had gotten there at like 6 in the morning.
Yeah, Dave
Yeah.
White, Alonso's husband, he insisted, like, no, it's going to be a thing. And Alonso was like, no, it won't. And he said this morning, he tweeted, okay.
It's
Dave,
a thing.
Dave wins. It's a thing.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing. I want to talk about that in a second, but Alonso said something really nice to me yesterday. He said that he watched Why I'm Going to Vote for Hillary Clinton, and that it made a difference for him.
Yeah, I think it made a difference for a lot of people. And it was, honestly, I don't know if it was a courageous thing to do because there's so many people that disagree. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters that watch this show that disagree. But you got to be honest. And I think that you made a lot of good reasons or had a lot of good reasons for voting for her.
He still voted for Trump, he told me this morning.
So I did get in there, though, and I did pause a little bit. But I'll get to my story in a second. But look, the reason why it was a little risky, for whatever, right? We're going to do what we're going to do. We always tell you the truth. So it was never a question in that regard. Because they're going to hold it against me for the rest of my life. Yeah. They're going to say I was...
Everything she does that
That's
they
right.
hate and that you hate.
Right.
Right.
And they'll be like, oh, no, you voted for it, so your objection to it doesn't count. Well, you led the protest. You led this. No, it doesn't count. Doesn't count.
So I tweeted that I'm gonna remind people after this election who supported Trump, who was pushing for Trump, and that if he becomes president, they'll be responsible for what he does. And then people responded, well, won't you be responsible for what Hillary does? And yes, but every time someone says, oh, you voted for Hillary, so you were for this, I will say, yes, I voted for Hillary over Donald Trump. Now, please make the case why you would prefer Donald Trump to be in the White House right now.
Well, yeah, but it's going to be it's always a winning argument when any time the candidate who they voted against does something reprehensible. You know, you're going to have, they'll say, well, I don't know, she wouldn't have done this. I'll take my chances with Trump. He wouldn't have bombed Yemen, or wouldn't have, when something, because of course terrible things will happen. As they would have under any president, but many of them will be policies that Hillary supports and that we hate.
I didn't know that we lived in a country full of psychics and fortune tellers, right? All of this talk about how Trump isn't as bad as people think he is ridiculous, coming from progressives specifically. How do you know? How do you know? There was one argument about how, oh, well, Donald Trump isn't really going to be the one in charge. It's going to be Mike Pence, and Mike Pence can be managed. That was the argument. Mike Pence, is a deplorable person, okay? Based on the types of laws he pushed for and signed in the state of Indiana, he is a bad person. Forcing women to pay for burials after they get an abortion, to bury their fetus, okay? That's just one example. What he does or what he thinks about, taxes, how the economy should run, all of these things make him beyond worse than Hillary Clinton.
For AIDS and HIV research and care, and wanted it redirected to gay conversion therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a madman. That's a madman who will kill people in order to satiate his peculiar beliefs about how humans are. And yeah, I mean, I think Mike Pence
emails.
Mike Pence is in the same category as Donald Trump. That's why I picked him. He's a different kind of person, and he gets how the levers of government work. So I suppose, in that sense, he's better, but in many ways, he's worse. They were a perfect couple.
Yeah. So I just want to say two quick last things about that, because in the next hour, we're going to have one last debate. So the four of us here, we disagree on many things, but on the Hillary Clinton vote, we all agree. So that's why I want to save it for the next hour, where we're going to bring in, the aggressive progressives. I thought I was the aggressive progressive. Yeah. Anyway, Jimmy Dore and Steve-O are going to come in and make one last case.
And that's good, because people say that this can be a bit of an echo chamber. And so it's good to see the pro-Trump side advanced every once in a while.
Yeah, save it for the show. Save it for the show, okay? So look, my last...
Please explain how there's any other option. Tomorrow morning, Hillary Clinton will be president or Donald Trump will be president. If you believe in anything else, you are off in Middle-earth. You're in a fantasy adventure I would like to join you on, but it's not actually going to happen.
Okay. My last two quick things is, hey, you know what? I wasn't proud to vote for Hillary Clinton today. It's not like I'm like, yes, finally, Hillary Clinton, right? But I was proud that I got to vote against a fascist in my life.
That's right. So that's right. That's exactly how I felt, except I'm more prouder to vote for Hillary Clinton because I don't think she's as terrible as you do, but I was not, it's not I wish we had not thought, oh, she gets to be president now. Like, we would have been a better country if we hadn't decided, oh, it's her turn. But voting against Donald Trump, taking a stand with millions and millions of other people, hopefully a solid majority of people, to say, no, not here, not in this country. You don't get to talk that way, act that way, single people out, divide people in that aggressive, horrible manner. You do own many of your supporters. I get everybody's got supporters we're not going to like, but you don't get to. You do have to own the Klan, and you do have to own the white supremacist movement. And being able in the same election to say no to Donald Trump and no to the death penalty made it a thrilling election for me. And regardless of what you think about Hillary Clinton, obviously we are overdue to have a woman in charge. This is not our ideal choice, but hopefully this, long after we're gone, 1 out of every 6 or 7 will be women. We don't want any more than that. No, hopefully it's the beginning of an issue where every year there's as good a chance that a woman will be elected president as a man.
Yeah. So I decided I lied a little bit because I'm going to go a little longer on the second part of the story. So I was eating breakfast with my kids this morning before I went to go vote, and they were both so excited at the idea that a girl could be president. They say girl, right? And so Joy was excited, and then I said, and then they found out that Donald Trump was. Because I told them it just came up because of school that I went to the same school as Donald Trump, and they're like, no. And I'm like, that means that somebody you're going to school with could also be president one day. And they're like, really? Like, Pro was like Darren? Right?
That's the person he thought.
Darren sounds pretty good.
Or Alex? And Joy looks up immediately in the precocious way she does. It goes, or me.
Oh. Look at the Pro thinking small and Joy thinking big. Yeah.
Totally. And so... But look, there is value in it. Just because there's, you shouldn't vote on someone just based on their gender. Of course, right. I would have never voted for Carly Fiorina, right, or Sarah Palin. Now, but there is a little bit of joy in a 4-year-old girl this morning going, or me.
Josie has been into it for 9 months now. The fact that a girl could be president. I mean, first of all, she doesn't think it's as big a deal. Any girl thinks as I do. Like, I was like, we could go to a UCLA basketball game. We're going to go watch the Lady Bruins play and the girls will play. And she was like, of course. Can we go to a boys game too? And I'm like, yeah, you're missing it. Okay, all right, yes. But I have a video, which I should send to somebody here so we could play it. We could get it edited properly. We got her, because it's me and Lee, we got her her placemat has photos of all the presidents. Right? It's like for kids much older, right? And so she eats every day with, James Buchanan and so forth. And her babysitter sent us a video one night because she's looking at it and she goes, why aren't there any girls here? Right?
Already a lid.
Right. And and the thing, and then the babysitter, Maria, says, well, maybe this year, this was during the primary. She goes, yeah, maybe Hillary Clinton. And Josie goes, yeah, maybe Hillary Clinton. Or Donald Trump. Or in the middle it was, Bernie Sanders.
Well, that's another reason why I was proud to vote against Donald Trump, because all the 1,000 issues I got with Hillary Clinton, the idea of Donald Trump beating the person who could be the first female president. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't get any worse than that.
That's right.
For pure irony, that doesn't sway my vote at all, but for irony purposes, yes, that would be interesting.
I actually experienced something yesterday that I guess I shouldn't have been shocked by, considering the rhetoric that we've been dealing with during this election. But it did shock me in the moment, and I did react to it. So John and I were in Reno, Nevada for the Fusion show, and very early in the morning, I went downstairs, just woken up, I was pretty grumpy, to go get a cup of coffee.
And play Game of Thrones slots.
And as I was waiting in line, there were 2 older white guys from the Cato Institute. There was apparently some sort of Cato conference there. That's a libertarian think tank, by the way.
Oh, they must have swarmed the TYT on Fusion set.
Oh, totally. They're all about it. No. They're behind me, and in the span of 5 minutes, they badmouthed Latinos loudly and very transparently. Badmouthed Latinos, Muslims, and black people, okay? Latinos don't contribute anything to society. I'm paraphrasing, they didn't speak that eloquently.
Except for all the hard work that they do that everyone else refuses to do. But outside of that.
So, Muslims are terrorists, the standard, right-wing propaganda about minorities. And I just couldn't take it anymore. And I just turned around and I told them to shut the F up. And they were like shocked that someone had said anything. And then that was it. They stopped talking. I think they were embarrassed. There was a line full of people and it was pretty loud. And we wouldn't have experienced that before. Like that kind of open hatred where you feel emboldened enough to talk like that about 3 groups of people in the country that are different from you. And it scares me. I don't want to live in a country like that.
Yeah, it was great that gay and lesbian and trans Americans felt comfortable coming out of the closet. Some stuff should stay in the closet. And so I get it. They thought that before, but feeling comfortable enough to voice it. Part of what kills it is that you never voice it. And hopefully you realize, I'm probably wrong. Like saying it out loud gives it agency. And I love that they were with the Cato Institute and this nonsense notion that somehow libertarians, I get it, because there are individual libertarians who don't think about it much. They just don't like the Democrats, they don't like the Republicans, and they want limited government. But the libertarian movement in this country is filled with conservatives who are just behaving under a different name. Not all, but many. And
also, so we focused a lot on the fact that the Trump movement and the normalization, a lot of this sort of rhetoric of various forms has let people who, as you said, would have normally been in the closet in that regard say it. But we also can't discount that it's adding to it, that there will be some people who are fairly simple-minded will think maybe there's something to this. And if he's considered respectable, if he's considered an actual source for information, then maybe there's something to the fact that black people suck and women suck and Muslims suck and all of that. And there's young people that will now grow up in households where there's more of that sort of talk, and their actual views will be shaped by the fact that it's much more common now.
Yeah, great point.
It's Schrodinger's cat. It actually affects the outcome if you say it out loud.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a bizarre analogy, but some of you got it. Okay.
I'm happy that you made it.
Okay. So here are the things that we're going to discuss more at length as we go forward here that were all just brought up in this discussion. Ballot measures, because they're actually, I think, enormously important in this election. Latino voters and how much of a difference they're going to make. Yes, the shady GOP voters, this discussion we were just having. I was telling Anna this morning, I underestimated how much America is race obsessed. And it's actually, then I realized, it dawned on me, I had like an epiphany. Of course, it's right-wingers doing their usual projection. They keep saying that blacks are race obsessed and minorities are, when it's the exact opposite, right? It's white right-wingers who can't stop thinking in terms of race.
Super fast, just because it was a great reminder of this form of normalization. I was watching, the only ever time I ever watch CNN, MSNBC, whatever, is when I'm on the road. And there was a Trump speech, and he was talking about the reports that in Florida, African-American voting, the population was down. And he said, and there's reports that they're not, the African-Americans aren't voting, and some of them are voting Trump, and my opponents are very worried about those things. That you get to just say, yeah, less blacks are voting, that's bad for them, not for me.
Yeah.
You get to just say it now, 2 days before the election.
And let's just, I'm sure we'll talk about voter fraud will come up because, of course, as we follow what other people are covering. And we're not tough enough on voter fraud. Like, we've tried, but inevitably humans can't be tough enough on this nonsense about voter fraud, which exists the other way. And it just occurs to me that all this talk about voter fraud for years, and I guess this is obvious, but it's tactical too, because it not only is a way for them to say the Democrats cheat, the left cheats, right? Black people are taking your vote. It allows them to reasonably move through this odious legislation, which is reason enough, by the way, to me, to vote for federal judges and voting rights. Hillary Clinton. Easiest call I've ever made in my life.
Climate change.
Huh?
Climate change, too.
Climate change, too, but she's arguably not great on climate change. But her Supreme Court justices will be okay. They won't be odious, and she'll protect voting rights aggressively. That Justice Department will protect voting rights aggressively. I hope you're right on climate change. So Right, but if you want to add climate change, I'll take it. So there's just three of the clearest reasons ever. They're denying Americans the right to vote because it suits them politically. And that's the only reason why. That's the voter fraud story. And any Republican who mentions voter fraud in the other way is, if not engaging in racial politics, is enabling it at a bare minimum.
Yeah. So they do voter fraud on a macro scale. They do. And we'll talk again more about that. I had another epiphany this morning, again, in a conversation with Anna, about Judeo-Muslim values. And I'll explain that a little bit later. We'll talk about the possible Trump cabinet.
Oh, God.
And so that was leaked yesterday from Trump sources as to who might be in it. I'll get to that in a little bit. And then, of course...
By the way, at our house, just at home, we just installed 2 Trump cabinets, and they're actually pretty good.
Oh, really? I would imagine that they would fall apart immediately.
No, the handles are gold, which is nice. Yeah.
Oh, in relation to the cabinet, I also saw a report. It was a photo that people have been tweeting out. It was like uncelebrated in near darkness. Chris Christie puts in his vote, and it's him. It's like he's in a barren area. It's dark, and nobody cares who he's voting for. There's no real coverage aside from some Twitter photos because his reputation has been so sullied.
Did I see correctly that his favorable rating is 19?
I had it at 21 yesterday.
Yeah, okay, so there was, I'm sure, some other poll that had it at 19.
That's right.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, but that's...
He canceled, he was going to go to New Hampshire to campaign for Trump over the weekend, and they just canceled all appearances.
That often, not always, not almost always, but often happens to Republicans. By the time they leave, their popularity rating is in the 20s, which is horrific. Obama, which all these people are like, oh, I don't know, the country's not sure about him. No. He's above 50%, 54, 55 now.
57.
Okay.
57, yeah.
Yeah, 57 compared to Bush, who was at 27 when he was leaving.
Yeah, 26. I just saw a thing today
Rigged.
of like Reagan was at, I don't know, 58. Clinton was at 60. Clinton's was artificially hyped by the Lewinsky scandal, literally because he just came together for his opponent, and the economy was humming along, no question. But Clinton obviously, it would have ended at a much lower approval rating if Republicans had just left him alone, not tried to impeach him, just let him be humiliated by the scandal rather than impeached. And Obama's at 55, whatever it was, 55, 56, and Bush 26 and a half. Yeah, just in that.
Jeez.
In that group.
You forget what a miserable failure George W. Bush was. I mean, a lot of you don't forget, but the media forgets. We whitewash it. No. But like they talk about how when you hear any mention of Jimmy Carter in the press, on television, it's either, by the way, he just saved the planet from another disease. Anyway, we're back with more Justin Bieber in a minute, right?
Yeah.
Or, the failure of Jimmy Carter, the weakness of Jimmy Carter. What are you talking about? Jimmy Carter, first of all, peace in the Middle East. I don't want to even get into all of his policies, but left with an approval rating at least 20 points higher than George W. Bush. So why don't you, every breath you take about George W. Bush, why don't you preface it, you do with Carter when he actually deserves it, about the failure of George W. Bush, the weakness of George W. Bush, the patheticness of George W. Bush. 27% approval rating. I cannot describe to you how low that is. It used to be a thing that didn't happen in American politics.
Yeah, it's look, I've been all over the place on this election. But at one point, one of the smart things I said, which I later totally contradicted by saying the opposite in a
Good work.
Yeah, but like at the beginning, I thought Jeb Bush had no shot, none. I was like, his brother is a catastrophe, and we're not gonna 8 years later. Embrace that. And I think ultimately that was part of the correctness of what happened to Jeb Bush. Yes, low energy, yes, never seemed like a guy running for president, and obviously just got sort of, he was a real casualty of Donald Trump more than anybody else. But I think we can't overlook the fact that Americans were like, hey man, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, your brother was a moron and terrible. And so this notion, because Bush's approval ratings have come up, yeah, because he hasn't been president. He hasn't pointlessly invaded a country in 8 years. So yeah, people think of him a little differently now.
But imagine if for the past 3 months it had been Jeb Bush instead of Trump. I don't find it hard to believe that he'd be beating Hillary Clinton.
No, and it would have been, we talked about that
Decisively.
yesterday on the post-game show, and just the nature of the arguments would be different. I would still obviously be an aggressive supporter of Hillary Clinton, again, because of judges and voting rights, for no other reason. That's enough to me. It's more than enough. But we would have known that, man, from a governing point of view, the parties are like they'd come from here and here to like here and here.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, I just wanted to make one quick point about Jeb versus Hillary if we were dealing with that instead of Trump. I think that Jeb would have a much easier time beating Hillary, to be honest with you, because one thing that Trump never really had was a sound strategy, right? He's all over the place. He doesn't know what he's doing. There's no ground game. But more importantly, if he were a smart candidate, he would continuously attack Hillary Clinton and her ties to Wall Street, her corruption. That's what the majority of Americans are upset about. But he wouldn't stay on message. Instead, he would go attack minorities. He would use, questionable rhetoric, violent rhetoric in some cases, and I think that actually did work against him quite a bit. But with someone like Jeb Bush, I think he would have advisors and a campaign strategy that would be much smarter and much savvier when it comes to beating Hillary.
They would have run a professional campaign.
Exactly.
And they would have tried, Trump tried to focus on Hillary, and this campaign, each candidate suffered when they were in the spotlight. But you're right, Trump couldn't avoid being in the spotlight. That's who he is, but that's also why he won.
Yeah.
So I've got to say something about that. I've been trying to get through the rundown of things we're going to do, and we're half an hour in, and we still haven't told you what we're going to do. Anyway, but I can't help myself. I'm going to jump in on this because, look, I actually think that Trump had the better chance of winning than the establishment Republicans. His only problem is that he's an idiot.
Yeah.
We always said he's a wild card.
Yeah.
And he was.
Yeah, and so the populist attack on Hillary Clinton is much more effective. Jeb Bush would not have been able to do a populist attack on her. He couldn't have talked about her corruption. He has the same corruption, but worse. So, he's, all your big donors. Jeb, what are you talking about? You have even bigger donors. So he couldn't have done that line of attack. Maybe a guy like Kasich, who would be full of crap, but maybe could have pulled it off because his last name isn't Bush or Clinton. So he might have, but the best candidate would have been a Trump-like angry populist who just wasn't grotesquely incompetent and didn't constantly punch himself in the face. So if he just, instead of talking about the fallen soldier in Iraq, the Khan family, and instead of talking about how he's not going to respect the results of the election and is not in favor of our Constitution and all these insane things that Trump said, if that populist candidate, all he said over and over again was, you're corrupt, the establishment is the worst, the establishment's been screwing you, that would have been a cakewalk, okay? Like a Dave Brat, how he beat, Dave Brat's this, I don't know if you guys remember, he's the guy who beat Eric Cantor. Eric Cantor was the House Majority Leader, the number 2 person in the House for the Republicans. And he lost in a primary to this total unknown named Dave Brat. And Dave Brat was not just that he was more conservative than Eric Cantor. No. He ran a more populist campaign. So it depends on your definition of conservative. Dave Brat said, you know who's screwing you? The banks and the establishment. And people were like, yes! It was unprecedented. A sitting House Majority Leader had never lost in a primary. And Dave Brat won. Okay. Yeah, and so if a guy like Dave Brat had run against Hillary Clinton, it would have been a cakewalk for the Republicans. But instead, they had this fucking orange buffoon going around going, I'm going to, trample on everything.
Hillary moved left. There's no question, whether she'll govern there, we don't know. We all have our thoughts about it. But if she'd run against a more mainstream Republican, I suspect she would have moved left. I suspect that would have been.
More so?
Yeah, more deliberately, more aggressively with a vice presidential pick, with an effort to galvanize the Bernie movement and a lot of the Obama movement to back her, because that would have been, to me, the best way. Here, her best way was, I'm a sane, steady hand. And that's really all she had to say. It was almost nothing. Let me just keep talking. Let me just keep the focus off me and my emails. That's all I have to do, and I'll just let this guy continue to blow up.
Yeah, when's the last time you saw a big speech about, hey, education for your kids? We're going to do this plan that's a hybrid of Bernie Sanders and mine, where we're going to get free college education so your kids can have opportunity. She has that plan.
Right.
She could use it. That's great. I'm glad she has that plan. But she didn't have to go to any of that. She just kept going, Trump over there.
Well, we also know from what we reported that if she had given that speech, the media would have covered it anyway.
Right, and it's not. It's all of our faults. It's our faults for being obsessed with the personalities of it. It's our fault for as Americans for not focusing enough on the issues, for not reading enough, for allowing a half or more of the electorate to go into every election ignorant on both sides of significant issues, and to be obsessed with the personalities of it. To have created a country where a reality star gets the nomination, to continue to sort of tout celebrity over policy. Politics is a, and I mean, Hillary obviously has become a different kind of celebrity also, a political celebrity. Politics is hard and complicated, and spending your life in public policy is super unsexy. It's incredibly unsexy. And we don't really fully respect it as the voting populace.
Yeah. So now,
what are we going to do today, Jay?
So as the day goes on, especially later at night, we're going to talk more about the coming populism, the discussion we were having here. What's going to happen in 2020? What should progressives do in the meanwhile if Hillary Clinton's the winner? And in just a little bit, we're going to talk about, is she going to be the winner? Who's going to win tonight? And we'll give you some details on the polling that gives you some sense of which way that it's going. And maybe if we're lucky, at the very end of the night, I might do one last loser Donald, which would be great. And
let me do it.
And gee, I wonder what it would be on. And then for you guys, we have a lot more streams. We've got reporters in Philly and in New York, at Trump headquarters, at Clinton headquarters. Nomi Cones is in Philadelphia, seeing if the Republicans are doing any kind of voter suppression there. There's apparently already long lines there, but she reports back in the morning that the lines are moving fine and that she is not seeing voter suppression yet. So she's gonna, if you're watching us on Facebook, we'll have multiple streams going on at the same time often. So facebook.com/The Young Turks. Jordan Chariton will be reporting from New York. We've got a protest that's happening starting at 8 o'clock Eastern outside of Hillary Clinton headquarters at the Jacob Javits Center in Manhattan. It's a joyous protest. A lot of people who go there will have voted for Hillary Clinton, but they still want her to make sure she does not run on big donor money next time around. So there's one request only. That is, next time, free and fair elections, meaning no big donor money. And if she makes that promise, well, then we'll have much more confidence that she'll actually work really hard the next 4 years to get big money out of politics. Because if she doesn't, then she would be at a disadvantage. So that would be a tremendous promise if she made that. And there's no reason not to start pressing on her, pressing her on it immediately. Those guys are gathering at 37th Street and 11th Avenue in New York at 8 p.m. And Jordan's going to interview a whole bunch of people that go there to see, get their perspective on why they care so much about getting money out of politics. There'll probably be one chant, and that's just next time free and fair. The Mankiewicz rule, don't over chant, okay?
I wouldn't even use the word over in that.
I hear you. We're just one fun chant. But you're going to like this part.
Free and fair is a chant? There's no rhyme there.
I know. Our chants don't have to rhyme. Don't make me bring out puns. Okay.
How about this? Freedom isn't free. Elections should be.
It's something. It's something.
Don't
Okay.
chant that.
How about Mondale Ferraro? Oh boy, watch out for tomorrow.
That was my 1984 chant that we chanted when we were canvassing in Philadelphia. Mondale Ferraro for a better tomorrow. Mondale Ferraro.
That's why he's so turned off on chanting, because that's the last chant he did back in 1984. By the way, this part you'll like though, Ben. We're going to have music. Emma from the TYT Politics team is bringing out a boombox. And half of the songs will be Bruce Springsteen.
No.
Okay. No, I'm serious.
Is that by her choice?
No, my choice.
Okay.
It's because I want revolutionary music that's fun. So the two examples I keep using are Les Mis and Bruce. But like My Hometown, Wherever This Flag Is Flown, We Take Care of Our Own, all these great, great songs from Bruce Springsteen that are revolutionary and populist. We'll be playing those at the protest too.
Free and fair, because we care. Free and fair, because we care.
All right, something. It's something. Maybe we'll do more than one chant. Okay?
Free
Maybe
and
we
fair.
will.
Pretend you care.
Good one. I like
Come
that.
on, Hillary, put in an effort.
So that should be a blast. If you're anywhere near New York, go ahead and do that. And by the way, if you want to figure out, hey, because we think it's going to be, basically, we talked to the police and to get a lay of the land, because Jacob Javits Center is huge in New York. But sign up for, if it's not 37th and 11th in New York, because police move it, then you're going to need to get updates. So go to tytnetwork.com/get updates. tytnetwork.com/get updates to get updates on exactly what that protest is going to be, and Ryan Clayton will be there, and he'll lead the proceedings as well. And so now, finally, let me come back around to. Oh, by the way, so one last thing of all the different things that we got going on: Philadelphia, New York, Trump. And by the way, if Donald Trump wins, the protest literally will walk. You guys will gather and you will walk to Trump headquarters, which is 2 miles away, also in Manhattan. Okay, it'll be a nice, interesting walk.
This is if he wins?
Yeah, in the horror scenario if Donald Trump wins.
Where you will be immediately massacred.
Okay.
All hail Trump.
But Wes Clark is inside the building in Clinton headquarters. So Wes is going to be doing some Facebook Lives. He's going to try to talk to some of the Clinton top brass.
Wow.
Okay, and so watch for that as well. Facebook.com/TheYoungTurks on that. Okay, and so finally, let me roll back around to the story I didn't finish about the kids, and then we'll give you the polls. So then after, we talk about how there could be a girl president for the first time, and I think Pro's as excited as Joy is. He thinks that's cool that there's something happening for the first time, right? And then Pro asked me one final question before we went to school. He's like, Baba, why is Donald Trump so bad? Right? And he didn't mean in a, esoteric sense of like, why do people do the things that they do? No, he's like, what is so bad about him?
Did you make him watch the entire run of Loser Donald? The whole playlist, start to finish?
No. And some of that is not kosher for kids. But anyways, did I mention Donald Trump was in 2 porn tapes? Not 1, but 2. For the Judeo Family Values guys out there supporting Donald Trump. Okay, so no, I said, Pro, he does 2 things wrong. One is that he doesn't work hard, right? So if somebody doesn't work hard, they're not prepared, and then they don't know what they're doing, right? So like if you don't practice your what they call sight words, right, then you don't know how to read, right? He's like, yeah, that's true. So that's what Trump doesn't do. He doesn't prepare. And last time we had a president who didn't work hard and didn't prepare. It was George Bush, and it was a disaster. And I had to explain to him another time the couple of things that went wrong under Bush. He's like, oh, okay. In fact, he said this time, because I'd explained it earlier, he's like, like George Bush, Daddy? Right? I'm like, yeah, like George Bush.
He's going to be hosting in a year.
I know.
Right. So, okay.
Little.
But then I said the second reason is because...
This job.
What's that?
Aww.
It's like the breakdown on Facebook. Okay. Anyway, I said the second reason is because he is against certain groups of people, and I said that's both wrong and mean and doesn't make any sense. I said, for example, he's got unbelievably, he has another Turkish kid in his first grade class in elementary school, right?
Oh, wow.
And I said, he thinks all people of one particular group are the same. So he'll say, oh, you and Karam are the same, and if Karam does something wrong, you're responsible for it. And he'd be like, and Pro was like, what? Like, to a 6-year-old, that doesn't make any sense. He's like, I don't understand. He's a different kid.
Yeah.
He's not me. I'm like, I know, but Trump says all people in one category. And then I said, you're also Chinese, right? And he has a bunch of Chinese friends. I'd say, like, if Chinchigaga breaks a toy, he'd say it's your fault. He's like, but I didn't break the toy, right?
Yeah.
So he just couldn't understand why anybody would do something so weird like that.
I just don't know why Pro won't condemn the breaking of the toy.
Yeah.
Why won't he just name it?
Just say it.
If he just named it, it's the Chinchingaga,
Right.
Then it would all be solved.
And why did Pro come up with the hoax of climate change? Why? Why, Pro?
What I do like, though, is that he doesn't just take statements at face value and just go with it. Like, he questions it. Like, why is he bad? I like that he does that. That's important.
Yeah.
It just reminds me of another, just a small parenting thing, which
We need to have kids
everyone
so we
either
can
has
talk more.
experienced.
Not together.
Is that you think you?
Yeah, I like that last caveat.
Yeah, I know.
Like, just in case, not together.
But you think you're gonna, when you're a parent, you think you're never gonna say, Anna points out that it's good that he questions it, but the number of times that you're tempted to say when they question something, that you go, and eventually you just break down and you go, because I said so.
Yeah, I bet.
And you're like, I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I want badly to explain to you why, but man, I've been asked. It's been too long. It's been too many minutes.
Break you
You've asked. Eventually, they just break you.
On the
Come on,
on the 13th why, you're like, Now I've over-explained this.
Yeah.
Okay, you've gotten me to overtalk, so you know we've crossed the boundary.
Well, because at some point you realize that what the kids are doing is like what alt-right people in the media or Ann Coulter does. They're not actually engaging in an argument that you just defer on. They're doing something sideways to the argument. They're trying to piss you off.
Yeah,
Well,
Josie's
Did you
a
just
troll.
compare their kids to Ann Coulter?
Yeah, Josie's a total troll. Yeah.
So no.
Does he have like a Pepe doll?
Pro's first couple of whys are super genuine, as I'm sure
Yeah.
almost all kids are, right?
Then they go crazy.
Yeah, if you're on the 13th why, there's a little why.
Yeah, there's no question that's true. So I want to mention a tweet I did this morning because you mentioned Ann Coulter, it reminded me. She had that hideous tweet. I don't know, it was yesterday that, just a reminder. She's like, if the Constitution said or whatever, if we only allowed people who had all four of their grandparents,
At least four.
at least four of their grandparents born in the United States, Trump would win in a 50-state landslide. I mean, that's just, it doesn't deserve a response. It's, and so I pointed out that I was like, great point. You're always thinking out of the box. But if only Trump's, here's another thing. I was like, if only Trump's family were allowed to vote, Trump would win 4-2.
Also, by the way, under her new rule, Trump himself would not be allowed to vote since one of his grandparents wasn't born in the U.S.
Let alone all of his wives.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, as people have pointed out, it's a very similar policy to what they had in Nazi Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it's hideous but just for the record, I'm going with Tiffany and Trump himself.
Come on, this is ridiculous. I can't believe it's me. No, I vote no.
I don't believe
Wrong.
Ivanka's not voting for him. I don't think. She gets in there, she votes Hillary, and then she goes out and says, "Yay, Daddy!"
But also like Melania. Like after all she's been through,
Yeah.
she'd be like, yeah, I don't think so, Hillary.
Oh, no way Marla Maples is voting for Trump.
I started following Marla Maples on the plane ride back because she said some interesting things, and she's super crunchy and earthy.
Oh,
she
really?
Said, yeah.
Oh.
But earlier in the year, she did say she supported Trump, but it was like at the beginning of his campaign. She said she didn't say supported him. She was like, "Oh, he's a good guy and a good father, and I'm glad he's doing what he thinks is best." But I'm with you. There's no way Marla Maples.
Okay. So, I mean, look, I know that we thought we were done with the racist trolls like Ann Coulter, and, we had the ban on her. We had the ban on one other guy named Trump, right? Isn't that amazing?
I know.
There was only 2 guys we'd ever banned in TYT history, and one of them was Donald Trump, way before he ran this time around.
Yeah.
And he broke us on that, to be fair. Okay,
And the other one you
like
debated.
kids. Another one I debated.
Yeah.
I mean, boy. But at some point, we've got as a country regain our sanity and get back to that. Because
we need more
Ann Coulter
bans.
is.
I've got suggestions for bans. After the election, we should revisit that policy.
Because Ann Coulter is an out-and-out racist. It's not like, hey, you guys are being libs or social justice warriors or whatever. No, she hates immigrants. She says that she's against the browning of America.
That's how you
I'm
lock.
very
That's how
much
you lock
in
in
favor of the
flavor.
browning of America.
Yeah, totally,
That sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You've been browned. Don't worry.
Oh, I know.
So, what can Brown do for you? All right. Anyway, no, but look, the jury's in. The jury's in on her, and her saying that all 4 of your parents being, real Americans and born here in America, and that's how you should vote. Well, that's just a big middle finger to every, new group of immigrants that have come in, and it's not based on, hey, you know what? I was really disgruntled with the Polish immigrant wave back in the 1940s, right?
Yeah.
No, we know what she's talking about.
I wouldn't be able to vote. I'm like the whitest person in the world. I wouldn't be able to vote because not all of my grandparents. In fact, I think maybe 2 of them were born in America.
I'm the only person at this table who could vote. So
Yeah?
at this table,
That's
still be
amazing.
1-0 Hillary.
Trust me, dig a little bit deeper. She's got problems with you too.
I'm sure. Yeah.
You don't have to dig
You
very
don't have
deep.
to dig very deep. Yeah.
By the way, really quickly, just going back to the immigrant thing, Cenk and I were. Cenk was in a documentary called All Governments Lie. I had a quick cameo. But in it, they talked about this story that didn't get any coverage. I didn't know about it. I don't know if you had known about it. It was a mass grave that was found in Texas near the border. And apparently, people were trying to cross. I don't know exactly what happened. They all died, and they were all buried in like plastic bags together in a mass grave. And so I don't know how you felt watching that. I know it broke your heart, but like I literally started tearing up and crying because I thought about the number of people who risk their lives to come here, not because they're trying to bring crime or violence or rape or whatever Donald Trump accuses them of. They are leaving everything behind, literally risking their lives, in a lot of cases dying for a better life for their families. And if stories like that got a little more coverage, I feel like we would be having a different discussion when it comes to immigration, you know?
Yeah, and so that's going to go to one of the points we're going to talk about throughout the day, which is in the old words of George W. Bush, I misunderestimated how much this country is obsessed with race. Because if, here we go, name the category. A Muslim guy had killed 200 white Americans and put them in a mass grave. That would be the biggest story of the year, easily.
Yeah.
Maybe the decade, right? If a black guy had killed 200 white guys and put them in a mass grave. Gigantic, endless story. And he said, I did it for Black Lives Matter. Okay, whatever. The biggest story of the year, right? A Mexican guy crosses the border, kills 200 white guys, puts them in a mass grave. Like, you know the enormity of those stories. 200 Mexicans cross the border, they somehow die. We don't know how they had died.
200?
There was 200 in that mass grave, okay? And they put it in a mass grave, nobody gives a shit. Nobody covers
it.
No,
it wasn't a news story.
200 Mexicans in a mass grave. Who cares? Who cares? And we move on.
And even
right?
if you don't think that they were murdered, at the very least, it is a tragedy. If
That's right.
If 200 had been lost on a plane, we would have covered it. Maybe.
How did 200 people die and not be murdered? I mean,
no, it's probably
no. We really don't know that. It might have been that they were crossing the border and their bodies were collected from different parts near that area, and they're like, oh, what do we do with them? Oh, fuck it, just put them in a mass grave. Who cares, right?
200 people, and it just seems.
That seems crazy.
Seems crazy, but
but we don't know because nobody other than this one guy who's featured in the movie and that works for the Nation Institute, who had over a year to investigate it, which is great that the Nation Institute does that. Other than him, no one else is covering it.
I mean, maybe they were in like trucks that were left open and they died of,
Yeah, it might. Yeah. Look, they sometimes bring them in big trucks, and so if you don't have air in there, maybe they all died in the truck, and then somebody dumped them, and the authorities here in America found them, and they're like, just put them in bags.
They didn't even care to identify the people. I mean, that was another part of it. I mean, the investigative reporter went out of his way to work with a university to identify the individuals that were killed or whatever happened to them, because there are people still living in Mexico. They're like, our loved ones are missing. We don't know where they are. Yeah. You know, imagine what that's like.
They also could have been massacred in Mexico by the cartels and then transported over and dumped in Mexico.
So, yeah, we don't know, but it's amazing that no one cares.
Yeah.
And by the way, like I said on the show yesterday, the British kid, 19 years old, tried to assassinate Donald Trump. That's a big story. He's only going to get like 2 years now in a plea deal, it looks like. But nobody covers it because he was white. If a Muslim guy tried to assassinate Donald Trump, oh my God! Imagine the size of that story.
He might have won.
Or a black guy who said he's doing it for Black Lives Matter. Oh my God! Imagine the size of that story. Or a Latino who had just crossed the border tried to kill Donald Trump. The size of that story. Oh, white kid tried to kill Donald Trump. Who cares? Let's move on. Nobody talked about it. This country's obsessed with race. Apparently, if you're white, you can take over federal buildings. You can point guns at by the way, if you're a right wing, if you're an environmentalist, good luck, brother. Okay, you can put guns at cops' head and say, we're going to murder you. You can try to kill their beloved hero, Donald Trump, and still no one will give a shit.
Well, not just trying. I mean, Sean King's been tweeting out in a small period, it was like 5 white guys had killed 6 cops. Like, they're apparently right-wingers who hated the cops, killed them. Nobody cares. I mean, we covered the guy who killed 2. How much media did that get? He killed 2 cops in an ambush.
That's why I say at the end of those stories, I said, look, maybe I could be proven wrong, but I'm going to predict it ahead of time. We will cover the story about this white right-winger who hates cops and who murdered those cops, and we'll be the last ones to cover it. And you'll never hear of it again because it doesn't serve their narrative.
Yeah.
If Black Lives Matter had executed 2 cops, what was that, in Kansas? See, I'm starting to forget. I think it was in Kansas. Okay. Oh, my God. I mean, look at what happened in Dallas. Look at what happened in Louisiana. And they weren't Black Lives Matter guys. The guy in Dallas was specifically rejected from all the black groups he tried to join, but nonetheless, they were all blamed for it. Meanwhile, two cops get executed in the middle of the country. People are like, oh, white guy did it? Who gives a shit? Who cares? Because they don't care about the cops. They don't care about criminality. They don't care about terrorism. They care about what race is he? What race is he? Because it's all about the race. It's not about the action. So, all right, anyway, for God's sake, let's do, right. We got to take a break soon. Okay, so let's do super quick, just like macro picture on the polls, and then we're going to take a break in a little bit because next hour, one last hill or high water fight, okay? Steve-O and Jimmy Dore are going to come in, and we're going to have one more conversation. Ben and I are going to stay about, what is the downside of voting for Hillary Clinton, not of having her as president, but of voting for Hillary Clinton. So national polls, Ben and I discussed this in the postgame last night for members, tytnetwork.com/join, by the way. Starting at 3 o'clock Eastern, you're going to have a whole 10 hours, an extra stream just for members. So don't miss that either. Brian Unger, the Undertaker, Unger Games star is coming in. Ida Rodriguez is coming in.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome.
They'll be on this show. They'll be on the members only show. So it's going to be fantastic. Anyway, last night as we were discussing the polls, I was saying 2.5 point lead nationwide for Hillary Clinton, but that was 2 days ago. And then Ben read 6 polls in a row of her at a 4-point lead. Okay. And so the latest polls have her very clearly at a 4-point lead nationally. 2.5 points. When she was at 2.5 points a couple of days ago when I was panicking on Saturday, if the late deciders break against her, and I'm assuming that those late deciders are about 1.5 points, right? Oh shit, it's a 1-point race. That's a statistical tie.
Yeah.
And in the different state by state, votes,
There was a very real possibility Hillary could win by 1 or 1.5 points and lose the electoral college.
That's right.
Still
She
is,
could lose the
but
electoral
still possible,
college.
yeah.
And so that's still possible, but it's less possible today because the late deciders appear to have, in that analysis, broken the other way. And she went from 2.5, not down to 1, but from 2.5 up to 4.
And so we have to combine the two things. One, that the early voting data, especially in some of the most consequential states, looks good for Hillary Clinton. And then that poll-wise, after the Comey announcement of several days ago, it seems like if there's been an influence on Election Day, it's towards her.
Yeah,
I mean, combine those two things, it's both good. Now, there are some states that didn't have early voting at all, which seems insane at this point. And there are important states, too, like Pennsylvania.
I mean, late breaking, I don't know. People go back and forth, and the race has sort of gone back to where it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, sort of gone back to where it was pre-Comey announcement.
Almost,
Maybe not quite.
almost.
Not quite. She had a slightly bigger lead pre-Comey, but we don't know whether that would have, most elections get closer.
Yeah.
So that might have happened anyway. It definitely didn't help. I don't even know that we talked about it a little yesterday. I don't even know that the revelation that there wasn't going to be a prosecution, or that the Weiner emails didn't reveal anything. I don't even know how much that helped because it was another day of stories and we were already done with it. We'll never know. It probably didn't hurt, but it might have been best to just stop, to never mention it again.
So, Jesus, I don't know if you've got the electoral map up that you can pull up there. If you can, grab that while I'm mentioning this. Because, look, I know that people talk about a whole bunch of different swing states, but I don't think Arizona is a real swing state. I don't think, I eliminated what I view to be states that are very likely going to Trump and Clinton based on polling
Arizona.
advantages. Georgia, Arizona. I don't have Michigan on here. I know that people were panicking about Michigan. Democrats were panicking about
You have
Michigan.
the wrong view, but you're crazy to have Pennsylvania on there and not Michigan. Michigan's
Okay,
in more danger.
So we can
Really?
we can talk about that. But the way I had it a couple of days ago, when it looked like Pennsylvania was in more danger than Michigan, I left Michigan out. But you can add that. But the way that I had the map then is 6 states that are your real swing states, where you had real questions as to who's going to win. And so I'll tell you what those are in a second. But at that point, there you go, perfect. Clinton's at 239 and Trump is at 214. Okay, this is assuming that Hillary Clinton wins Michigan and Donald Trump wins Arizona and Georgia, etc. Okay, Iowa. So your 6 states that are going to determine the election today are Nevada, Colorado on the West Coast. Okay, very, very important. And then on the East Coast, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida. So those are, even if you have Michigan up on the board, or you think that Hillary Clinton has an outside chance in Arizona, et cetera, it doesn't really matter because if Trump wins Michigan, that means he probably won Pennsylvania and he probably won fairly easily. If Hillary Clinton won Arizona, she landslided him. So it's totally irrelevant, right? So those are the 6 most important states. The East Coast comes in first, and Florida closes at 7 o'clock. Pennsylvania closes at 8 o'clock.
Does all of Florida close at 7 o'clock?
I know some of it does. And the minute that some of it closes at 7 o'clock, you'll have the early voting results immediately.
Yeah.
So that's 7 o'clock Eastern, where we'll begin to have real information. Some portions of Indiana close at 6 o'clock. That also has some ramifications for Evan Bayh, the Senate, and maybe some tea leaves on
I take
Florida's
any amount of money against Evan Bayh. There's no amount of money that I think I can. Evan Bayh's going to lose, and he gave it away, and he has Evan Bayh to blame.
Yeah. Florida's 7 p.m. the Eastern time zone,
the
portion 8
Panhandle
p.m.
closes
the
at 8,
Right. So we will discuss all those states and what happens under the different scenarios as the day continues. But we've got to take a break here
Because you're wrong, but okay.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, again, you could put Michigan on that list, and Ben will give you more details on why I'm wrong on those 6 that we just outlined. So Jimmy and Steve coming back. Tell everybody, sharing is caring. Share on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, and let everybody know one last big fight coming up in the next hour. Do you vote for Hillary Clinton or someone else? They're not voting for Donald Trump, okay? But I believe they both voted for Jill Stein. We'll find out when we come back and why they did that. I think they have some good cases. Obviously, we'll be on the other side. And so we'll be right back in a couple of minutes.